who will be in the place of the mobile network operator, who at least sits there with a perfect gateway, as in he's got the name and address of every single person, and he's got the SIM card, and if you do a micro payment through your O2 or Vodafone or whatever, it just goes on your bill. If I'm not the pay TV operator who's decided I changed my model a bit, and frankly I make more money than God as a pay TV operator, so why would I change my model so long as I've still got that captured audience and don't let it go outside the UI and all the rest of it? Who's going to fulfill that function of transacting those micro payments, doing the deals with the publishers, and looking after the consumer?
The answer to that question is anyone with a billing relationship, existing billing relationship, can now use OTT devices to extend their customer reach. Now,
so that's why we see people like ISPs,
ISPs, even retailers. I mean, what Tesco or Best Buy want to do with this opportunity if they hold a billing relationship?
Well, I always think that's more interesting than what Google's going to do next, isn't it? Is what is Tesco going to do next?
It's very interesting. So I think that there is a big opportunity here for small telcos and ISPs that don't necessarily want to become pay TV operators, i.e. implement a big, expensive IPTV project with Microsoft or someone, to actually bundle a TV device that's a hybrid device with their ISP subscription, implement some quality of service tricks on their router, or maybe bundle something like this Wi-Fi thing with it and create stickiness between the actual ISP broadband subscription and a television-based product that hasn't cost them any content minimum guarantees. They're not streaming the content themselves. It's all OTT.
Does that mean? I mean, that means getting rid of the concept of IPTV per se.
I think IPTV is much.
It's
very, very limited growth now.
And probably rightly so as well. IPTV for me is a very expensive way of doing what you can now do relatively easily using a good CDN and the open internet. Yeah, there's no need for that kind of enormous network infrastructure investment. Cisco and Alcatel-Lucent and Ericsson may have a different view, but I see everything working perfectly well already. You know, I can stream content to my house very easily. I think IPTV has a role in gated communities in developing markets. If you look in the Middle East, probably Latin America and
well, you
African
don't have
markets.
Broadcast infrastructure in place, and you've got a very good IP or DSL style backbone in the country. But you just look at the basic economics of it. You know, using a broadcast technology, I can increase my subscriber base, and I've still got a fixed cost, right?
Yeah.
With an IPTV infrastructure, my fixed cost goes up with my subscriber base, right? If I'm entering a market, I've got the same minimum guarantees, content costs to pay for the carriage, and so the answer is actually hybrid is the most economical way to deliver television, even in the pay or free to air.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
If I'm a provider that is an ISP, let's say, and we got a reasonable next generation network, so there's not any bandwidth problems and all the rest of it. But I've done a deal with these hundreds and hundreds potentially of content providers. How does security work at that point? Am I likely to provide the security layer, and that's part of what I sell to the publisher? But what if the publisher then says, "Oh no, I require this"?
Well, if you or whoever you are, if you're doing a deal with studios, then they're going to expect you to take on the responsibility for providing that.
But it's not just studios, is it?
I mean, be liable for it.
I mean, studios are one thing, and they're going to want you to, studios always want everything all the time. Yeah, exactly. And eventually they'll have to put it all out everywhere at the same time because it will still get nicked. But if you're doing everything from the video part of magazine subscriptions to single plays of music videos to whatever, do you think there will be a service provider that provides a security conduit for all of that, or are you going to have to deal as middleware people with hundreds of different security provisions?
Well, I think you will inevitably have to deal with multiple different kinds of security because there are multiple different kinds of asset that will need to be secured. And the one thing we haven't touched on, it's maybe less relevant to set-top boxes, is ebooks. And ebooks will have a different kind of security to a music video where there's slightly more relaxed attitude, to a real premium Hollywood movie that came out only last week. Top security there, and last night's episode of EastEnders is maybe less secure again. So whatever you do, you have to have a slightly security agnostic view of the world. You have to lock down content which is going to be available on here and on iPhones and anywhere else.
So this is a major problem. The problem, to sum it up, is if an ISP puts out a box and it's got a particular security model do they specify all the content has to match that? And if so, how can it be an open system where lots of people are using different things and have lots of content that requires different things? So this is a complex problem, and it's actually a problem of fragmentation, right? Set-top boxes have different capabilities, be it the codec, the streaming protocol, the line speed, the rights management or security interfaces, and publishers of any kind of content have different delivery technologies. Formats. They can do different things. Now, actually, the way we handle that in our system is to make sure the user never gets an experience where they find content that they can't play. So in our discovery tools, we actually do a matching service, and we filter out content that won't play. Now, what it ends up being is that, yes, a set-top box goes into the market with a particular set of capabilities. That's known in the service platform in the cloud. As publishers support those capabilities, they become discoverable, right? So if a publisher suddenly starts supporting their content in Windows Media and only before and now support H.264, then on an H.264 only box, suddenly that content provider will appear. Now what we do is just make sure the viewer doesn't get a bad experience by getting the mismatches and filtering out stuff that doesn't work. So you need this matching service in the middle that understands the capabilities of the device and understands the requirements of the publisher.
I think what you're talking about there is something that we're also spending a lot of time on at the moment, which is the notion of a media hub. So an operator, pay operator, would have some kind of media hub which allows them to have some degree of automation of how they publish their content and where they publish it to. So if you have an entitlement, back to Avatar again, to publish Avatar onto an Android phone, then it needs to be treated in a certain way. The metadata and the video format and the security all need to meet certain standards. So why not automate that so that, one, you can only find content that you're entitled to and that should be consumable on the device you're looking at it from. And make sure as well, of course, that you're paying for it. You have paid your subscription, or you've paid $3.99 to view it now, whatever it might be. And as we look at more and more devices, that's becoming increasingly complicated. All the time, new devices are coming onto the market. Mobile handsets are varying all the time. Set-top boxes, they're all different. We have to deal with them in different ways. And the middleware within them needs to be treated in different ways.
And from the standpoint of the set-top box, basically the complexity is adding each of these capabilities. We have to support all the codecs. We have to support all the digital rights and content access.
All these different standards.
All the standards, all the connectivity standards in the same piece of silicon.
Yeah, and exactly, and it all just needs more and more and more and more processing. I mean, how much updating can you do over the net? I mean,
well, you can certainly update all the software firmware over the net, so you can do that. You can't really update that sort of stuff. You just can't. But you can do a lot to update the software, the feature set, and so on. In fact, the set-top box operators insist on being able to fully update and upgrade.
A lot of the incompatibilities we've seen have not been actually in the core hardware decode, like does it support this particular codec, or in the wrappers and the protocols and the containers, which actually vary, and they're normally down at the software driver level, and you do see an evolution of capabilities of a box even after it's gone out into the field as you begin to support these more wrappers and codecs, and not codecs, but the wrappers and the containers and the audio formats.
The set-top box having more CPU powers allow you to accommodate some of the things that the hardware doesn't support using the CPU platform. Software decode. And this is also with the encryption. I mean, soft encryption is also very common in that domain, because you can support several soft encryption, Windows Media, Enerdata, and other types of encryption using the software and the CPU power of the chip, which is becoming stronger and stronger just to accommodate this. And I think
so that's more vanilla.
No, I'm working for him.
Part of the issue, though, is on the other side is power. So I mean, you can do these things in the CPU, but the requirements for power in the set-top box and the processor are going down. So I mean, this vision that eventually it'll be in software seems to be moving further and further out, because the codecs...
Yeah, I believe TV is dependent on hardware decode of video, and I think that's one of the fundamental things that differs it from a PC experience.
This is bringing in the DVB and turning it into whatever it is you want to...
Yeah, I mean, if you design a chip that in hardware can decompress whatever codec is transmitted and then generate your HDMI digital out in hardware, you can just have it sitting there at 5 volts and doing the damn thing. If you try to do it like with a Pentium in software, then the actual amount of power the chip has to use to do this is so much higher.
Yeah.
And also, you've got the problem on a PC, haven't you, when somebody gets busy with something and you get a jitter or a hardware is like a pump, as long as you keep the buffer full, it keeps coming out the other end and it looks just like TV. People can't tell the difference between video delivered over the internet and real TV. As long as you keep the buffer full, you've got it encoded at the right time, it looks just like TV. And that's because of the hardware capability.
I mean, definitely in the old days with the older chips, I mean, you would do live channel on IP and then the UI was stuttering, it was not flowing. So definitely with the hardware decoding, you definitely can still maintain a high definition UI running very fast while the set-top box can do 1 or 2 HD videos in parallel.
I think that's one interesting thing. If you look at the mobile market, there's an expectation now that the software will be upgraded over time with your phone, for example. So you get new updates. And it's going to be interesting to see if that comes through into, for example, digital TV or into set-top box, where you will expect the Samsungs and the Philips of these worlds to update the TV in the future.
Certainly from a security point of view, over-the-air updates are enormously important because security is an evolving thing. The notion of managing the security of content over an entire lifetime is essential. You have to be able to offer over-the-air updates to counter hacks and to make sure that security remains as tight as it can be. So for us, over-the-air security updates for sure are very
I think it's slightly different though,
business.
because what you're now finding is it's new functionality that's been delivered to you. And so the device isn't just sold and that's it. The people who own the device, the Samsungs, are now having to say, well, over time I'm going to have to add new functionality because that's what the market's going to expect. And that's certainly what we're seeing in the mobile world.
How's
And
that
that kind
get
of,
paid for?
well, that's the interesting thing.
But does that mean you'll begin to build into connected TVs the functionality for audience knowledge, data collection, and targeted advertising?
So this is we come back to this idea of a cloud-based partner supporting functionality updates for manufacturer. The manufacturer that sells a product in retail and gets his margin and it's shipped has no incentive to continue support or software development for that device upgrade.
Unless it begins to pick
launch
up.
a new box at CES next January and have you throw away the old one and buy a new one.
But then is he going to have to change his complete way of thinking and think, well, I now have to subsidise this Toshiba 50-inch because I've had to put these damn great chips in it.
I think what's happening is...
But I'll take a cut on some kind of targeted advertising that you might manage on my behalf, I suppose.
That's exactly right. So the commercial models in the services, the content delivery services that are behind these connected TVs, done in partnership with the manufacturer, can provide recurring revenue streams to the manufacturer. So now he no longer has to just think about what margin do I make on retail, which is a market growth-based revenue stream, but what recurring revenues do I get from having this market share,